Studies show most men miss over 80% of female attraction signals daily, not because the signals aren't there, because no one taught them what silence looks like. What if the most powerful thing she ever said to you, she never said at all? There is a particular kind of blindness that men carry into adulthood. It isn't stupidity. It isn't weakness. It is something far more specific than that. It is the blindness of a man who was taught to listen to words. Only words. Always words. We are trained from boyhood to process language, to respond to language, to respond to language, to wait for language. And in doing so, we miss the entire conversation that is happening beneath the surface of every interaction we will ever have with a woman who wants us. Because here is the truth that most men never encounter. Women do not lead with words when they are attracted. They lead with the body. They lead with movement, with proximity, with the placement of their hands and the angle of their chin and the way they orient their chest toward you when the room is full of other options. Language, for a woman experiencing genuine attraction, is secondary, sometimes tertiary, sometimes it doesn't come at all. The body speaks first. And if you don't understand that language, if you have never been taught to read it, you will spend the better part of your life standing in rooms full of green lights, convinced every signal is red. That is not a small thing to lose. That is years. That is real connection missed. That is the slow erosion of a man's confidence. Not because women rejected him, but because he never understood they were reaching toward him in the first place. This matters. Not as a game, not as strategy, but as fundamental literacy. Understanding how attraction moves through the female body is not manipulation. It is the difference between being present in your own life and being a ghost in it. The science here is not complicated, but it is profound. Research established decades ago that human communication is overwhelmingly nonverbal. The numbers are debated in their specifics, but the direction is undeniable. The body carries the emotional content of what we are trying to say far more accurately than the words we choose to say it. And when it comes to attraction specifically, the stakes are even higher, because attraction is not a cognitive decision, not primarily. It is a physiological event. It happens in the older parts of the brain, the limbic system, the parts that predate language by hundreds of thousands of years, the parts that fire before the rational mind has had a single coherent thought. A woman does not decide to be attracted to you, her body decides. And then, if she lets herself, her mind follows. This means that by the time she is choosing her words carefully, the real signal has already been sent. You just have to know where to look. Behavioral scientists who study courtship and nonverbal communication use a term worth knowing: autocontact behaviors. These are unconscious self-touching gestures that occur with elevated frequency in the presence of someone who triggers arousal, excitement, or deep social interest. The key word is unconscious. She's not doing this on purpose. She is not performing it. Her nervous system is doing it for her because something in your presence has moved her enough that her body is responding before her mind has had the chance to decide whether it should. That is what we are going to explore today. Not a list of tricks, not surface-level flirtation tips. A real education in what the female body communicates when it is telling you the truth. Imagine a room, low light, the kind of ambient warmth that softens everything. Conversation somewhere in the background, not close enough to hear clearly, just close enough to remind you that the world continues to exist beyond the two of you. She is sitting across from you or beside you, and something about this moment has shifted. You can feel it. You have always been able to feel it in a vague way. Something charged. Something different from ordinary conversation, something with weight in it, but you don't trust the feeling. Because you've been wrong before, because you've learned, through the accumulated small humiliations of misreading a room, to doubt your instincts and wait for certainty that never quite comes in a form you can accept. This is where that changes, not because I'm going to give you a magic formula, but because I'm going to teach you to read what was already there. Watch the hair, not the way it looks, the way she touches it. When a woman who is genuinely drawn to you reaches up to touch her own hair, to run fingers through it slowly, to tuck a strand behind her ear, to gather it to one side of her neck, she is not thinking about her hair, she is responding to you. The hair touch is one of the most well-documented self-grooming signals in human courtship behavior. Evolutionary psychologists describe it as a preening reflex, the same biological impulse that causes animals to physically present themselves when in the company of someone they wish to attract. She is not preening for the room, she is preening for you, and here is the detail that separates this signal from ordinary habit, frequency, and context. Women touch their hair routinely throughout the day. This is not by itself meaningful, but when the frequency increases in your presence, when the gesture becomes slower, more deliberate, more directed toward the neck and the ears where the skin is sensitive and exposed, that is different. That is not habit. That is response. Notice also the direction of the touch. When she pulls her hair back or to one side in your presence, she is exposing her neck. The neck is one of the most vulnerable areas of the human body. Exposing it, in the language of the nervous system, is an act of trust, of openness, of lowered defense. She may not know she is doing this. Her body does. The neck deserves its own conversation, because a woman who is attracted to you does something with her neck that is quiet, powerful, and almost impossible to fake. She tilts it. Not dramatically, not performatively, a slow, slight tilt to one side, sometimes accompanied by a downward glance, sometimes paired with a small, private smile. The kind that isn't quite meant for you to see, but is. This gesture has a name in nonverbal communication research, the head cant, and its presence during intimate conversation is one of the clearest indicators of genuine interest in the literature. The head cant signals receptiveness, curiosity, a kind of emotional softening that the body expresses before the mind has the words for it. But when she also touches her neck with her own hand, fingertips to the collarbone, or a slow movement along the side of the throat, you are witnessing something else entirely. That is self-soothing under the pressure of excitement. The autonomic nervous system, when activated by arousal or intense social interest, creates a physiological restlessness, a subtle buzz of energy that needs somewhere to go. The hands move to the body, specifically to sensitive, warm areas of skin. The neck, the throat, the collarbone. This is not seduction theatre. This is a woman whose nervous system is responding to you so strongly that it is trying to manage itself. Be still when you see it. Don't fill the space with words. Let it breathe. This one most men walk past entirely. The wrist is not something we are trained to notice. It is small. It is subtle. It requires a particular kind of quiet attention. But when a woman exposes the inside of her wrist toward you during conversation, when she holds her drink with her palm rotated outward, when she gestures in your direction with the soft inner skin of her wrist visible, she is sending one of the most ancient vulnerability signals in the human behavioral catalogue. The wrist is where the veins are visible, where the skin is thinnest, where the pulse lives. In primate behavior research exposing the ventral soft underside of the body, the throat, the stomach, the inner wrist, toward another individual is a signal of trust and non-threat. Among humans, it has evolved into something more layered, more intimate. When she turns that soft interior toward you, she is not protecting herself from you. That is the signal, the absence of defense. Notice also when she touches her own wrist, when she absently runs a thumb across the inside of her opposite wrist during conversation with you. This is another form of autocontact, stimulating the sensitive skin as a physical response to internal tension that is not quite anxiety, not quite excitement, but somewhere in the territory between them. That territory has a name. Attraction. Sit across from her, or beside her, and watch what her legs do, not in a predatory way, in a perceptive way. There is a difference between a man who watches and a man who sees. You are learning to see. When she is seated across from you and her knee is pointed in your direction, that tells you something. Directional orientation of the lower body, when it cannot be easily controlled through social awareness, reflects genuine psychological interest. The upper body is easier to perform. The legs and feet are not. Research by behavioral analysts in nonverbal communication identifies the lower body as the most honest communicator we have. Humans are largely unaware of what their legs and feet are doing at any given moment. They are focused on their face, their words, their hands. The feet and legs behave with extraordinary authenticity. When her feet are pointed at you, when her knee leans into your space, when she crosses her legs in a way that orients the top knee towards your direction rather than away from it. These are not coincidences. But what happens when she touches her own leg in your presence? When a hand moves to the upper thigh, slowly, during a moment of connection? When her fingertips trace the fabric of her jeans in a small repetitive movement while she talks to you or listens to you? That is a deeply significant signal. The upper leg is not a place women touch absently. It is not socially neutral territory, like the shoulder or the arm. The movement of a hand to the upper thigh in the company of someone she is drawn to is an autocontact gesture of the highest order. It is the body's way of managing desire that isn't yet ready to become an action. Watch for it, and when you see it, remain calm, present, grounded. Your stillness in that moment is itself a message. This one lives in plain sight. It is the drink she holds at the bar, the phone she turns slowly in her hands, the necklace she reaches up to touch, the ring she slides up and down her finger while you talk, the edge of the table she traces with a fingernail. All objects, all touched, manipulated, handled, all performing the same unconscious function. Psychologists studying tactile displacement behavior note that when the hands want to touch something, someone, but social permission has not yet been established, they find a proxy, an object close enough to handle, a substitute that allows the body to express tactile interest without crossing the boundary that hasn't yet been explicitly crossed. When she is playing with her jewelry in front of you, she is not bored. When she is wrapping the cord of her earphones around her finger while she talks to you, she is not distracted. When she reaches up to touch a pendant at her collarbone, especially if it draws your eye downward, especially if her fingertip rests there for a beat longer than necessary, she is not checking whether the clasp is secure. The hands always tell you what the mouth hasn't decided to say yet, and the objects are merely messengers. Pay attention to the rhythm of the touching. Anxiety has a frantic energy, distraction is irregular and directionless. But the tactile displacement of attraction has a particular quality, slow, rhythmic, almost meditative, a repetitive movement that soothes the body, while the mind is consumed by something that feels very much like anticipation. Everything before this has been about the way she touches herself. Now we arrive at the touch she extends to you. And here is where you must be careful. Because not all touch is equal. Not all touch means the same thing. And a man who mistakes friendly warmth for attraction does himself and everyone around him a disservice. So we will be precise. The touch that signals genuine attraction has specific qualities. It lingers, a touch that lasts half a second longer than strictly necessary. A hand on your forearm during conversation that does not immediately withdraw. A shoulder bump that holds contact before breaking. That extra half second is not accidental. The nervous system knows when to retract. When it doesn't, it is because something is holding it there. It finds reasons to exist. She creates moments to make contact. She reaches across you rather than around you. She adjusts something near you rather than stepping back. She invents small reasons for her hand to briefly exist in your space. Manufactured touch is still intentional touch. The manufacturing itself is the signal. It moves towards softness. Attraction-driven touch tends towards softer, more personal contact over time, from shoulder to forearm to the back of the hand to the knee. The progression is the language. Each step requires the previous one to have been received without retreat, and then there is the touch that has no practical purpose at all. The touch that happens mid-laugh, the hand that finds your chest for a single moment during a moment of shared amusement, the fingertip against your wrist when she is making a point. These are not gestures with explanations. These are the body saying what it means. Here is the thing about all of this. None of it is performance. That is what separates this from cheap manipulation content. From the lists and the tactics and the tricks, none of what you have learned is a way to catch a woman out. None of it is a weapon. It is translation. The human body has been communicating attraction this way for longer than our species has had written language, longer than we have had complex spoken language. These gestures precede civilization itself. She's not sending you signals because she's playing a game. She's sending them because the body does not know how to lie in the way the mind does. The body does not have access to the armor of sophisticated language, the careful curation of impression, the exact calibration of words chosen to reveal just enough and protect everything else. The body just responds, and what you now understand is that every time a woman has touched her hair slowly in your presence, every time she has reached for her necklace while you were talking, every time her wrist turned toward you or her knee drifted in your direction, she was already having a conversation with you. You just didn't have the language yet. Now you do. But here is the deepest truth this ends on. Most men, when they learn this material, make one critical error. They start watching, analyzing, cataloging. They become so focused on reading the room that they forget to inhabit it. They step outside themselves into the role of observer, and in doing so they sever the very presence that was generating the signals in the first place. She was touching her hair because of how he made her feel. The moment you stop making her feel anything because you are too busy watching to actually be there, the signals stop. Not because she lost interest, because you vacated yourself. The most powerful thing you can do with everything you have learned today is this: stay in the room. Stay in your body. Stay grounded in who you are and what you are bringing to the space, and simply, quietly, allow yourself to notice. Not hunt, not analyze, not collect data, notice. There is a version of masculine presence that is so rooted, so fully inhabited, that a woman in the room with it begins unconsciously reaching toward it without knowing why. Her body moves first, her mind follows later, and the man at the center of that gravity, the one who understands what is happening without becoming destabilized by it, that man does not need tactics. He needs only presence, and the quiet, unhurried knowledge of what it means when she reaches up, slowly, in the middle of a sentence that has nothing to do with what she's really saying, and touches her hair. You are always being told something. Now you know how to listen.